pregnant German shepherd, was chained to a roller coaster track, baby's next move. Left everyone in tears. What happened next will shock you. Grab some tissues and prepare for an emotional journey that will touch your heart. If this story moves you, let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Thunder crashed outside the window, shaking the small two-story house to its foundations. Rain pelted against the glass like tiny stones, creating a constant rhythm that usually lulled 5-year-old Liam to sleep. But tonight was different. Tonight, something was wrong. Liam pressed his small hands against the cold window pane, his breath creating little clouds of fog that disappeared almost as quickly as they formed. His blue eyes, wide and alert despite the late hour, scanned the darkness beyond. "Mommy," he whispered, not turning away from the window. "Mommy, someone's crying." Hannah, exhausted after a 12-hour shift at the hospital, sighed as she folded the last of the laundry. Her son had always been sensitive, too sensitive, according to her husband Mason. Where other kids saw shadows, Liam saw monsters. Where others heard the wind, Liam heard voices. "It's just the storm, sweetheart," she said gently, placing the folded towels into the hallway closet. "The wind can sound like crying sometimes." But Liam shook his head stubbornly, his blonde curls bouncing with the movement. "No, Mommy, she's scared. She needs help." Hannah walked over to her son and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Through the window, she could see nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of lightning illuminating their rain-soaked backyard. "There's nobody out there, Liam. Who would be outside in this weather?" Liam's bottom lip trembled. "She is, and she's scared." Hannah knelt beside him, trying to mask her concern with a reassuring smile. Liam had always been different from other children his age. His preschool teacher had commented on his unusual empathy, how he seemed to feel others' emotions as if they were his own. It was both a gift and a burden for a child so young. "How about some hot chocolate?" Hannah suggested, hoping to distract him. "Then it's straight to bed. Daddy will be home soon, and he'll check outside if you're still worried." Liam nodded reluctantly and followed his mother into the kitchen. But as Hannah reached for the cocoa powder in the cabinet, a particularly loud clap of thunder shook the house. The lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged the room into complete darkness. "Mommy," Liam cried out, his voice tinged with fear. "It's okay, baby," Hannah reassured him, fumbling for her phone in her pocket to use as a flashlight. "Just a power outage. The lights will come back on soon." The soft glow of her phone illuminated Liam's face, his features twisted with worry. But he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the window again, and this time, Hannah could have sworn she heard something too. A sound that didn't quite fit with the howling wind and pounding rain. A cry, distant but distinct. Before Hannah could process what she was hearing, Liam bolted toward the window. "See, Mommy? She needs help. She's calling us." Hannah followed her son, a chill that had nothing to do with the power outage creeping up her spine. As she reached the window, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, and for a brief moment, she could see past their yard to the abandoned amusement park that sat at the edge of town, a decrepit reminder of better economic times. The old roller coaster, a twisted metal skeleton against the stormy sky, seemed to come alive in the lightning flash. And though Hannah tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, she could have sworn she saw movement near its base. "The crying is coming from the park," Liam said with absolute certainty. "From the roller coaster." Hannah shook her head. "Liam, that's impossible. The park has been closed for years. No one goes there anymore." "She's there," Liam insisted, his voice rising with urgency. "She's afraid and alone and—" His words were cut off by another cry, louder this time, unmistakable even over the storm. The front door opened with a bang, and Mason walked in, soaked to the bone, his work boots leaving muddy prints on the floor. "Power's out all over town," he announced, shaking rainwater from his jacket. "Storm knocked down a power line near the old park. I saw it on my way home." Hannah met her husband's eyes over Liam's head. "Mason, Liam thinks he hears someone crying from the direction of the old amusement park." Mason's expression softened as he looked at his son. "Buddy, no one would be at the park in this weather. It's probably just the wind playing tricks on you." But Liam was beyond consolation now. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he pulled away from his mother's grasp. "No, you're not listening. She's there, and she's going to get hurt if we don't help her." Mason exchanged a worried glance with Hannah. Their son's distress was real, even if the cause wasn't. He knelt down to Liam's level. "Who's a she, buddy?" "Who do you think is out there?" Liam's next words sent a chill through both parents. "I don't know her name, but she's gonna have babies soon, and she's scared. So scared." As if to punctuate his words, a particularly mournful howl cut through the storm noise, a sound that was unmistakably animal, yet filled with such pain and fear that it seemed almost human. Mason straightened up, his skepticism giving way to concern. "That didn't sound like the wind." "We have to help her!" Liam cried, already running toward the front door. Before either parent could stop him, he had thrown it open and was dashing barefoot into the storm. "Liam!" Hannah screamed, grabbing the first jacket she could find and racing after her son. Mason was right behind her, flashlight in hand. The rain was merciless, soaking them instantly as they chased their son across the yard. Liam, driven by some force neither parent could understand, ran with purpose toward the abandoned amusement park, his small feet splashing through puddles as lightning cracked overhead. "Liam, stop!" Mason shouted, his voice nearly lost in the roar of the storm. But Liam was beyond hearing, beyond reason. Something was calling to him, and he would not be deterred. Hannah's heart pounded in her chest as she ran, fear for her son overriding any concern for herself. The old amusement park was a dangerous place even in daylight. Rusted metal, rotting wood, potential sinkholes, where the ground had eroded beneath abandoned structures. In this storm, in the darkness, it was a death trap. They reached the chain-link fence that surrounded the park. Once meant to keep trespassers out, it now lay partially collapsed in several places. Liam squeezed through a gap without hesitation, disappearing into the shadows beyond. "Liam!" Hannah cried, forcing her way through the same opening, ignoring the sharp edges that caught and tore at her clothing. Mason followed, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing glimpses of what had once been a place of joy and laughter, now transformed by time and neglect into something sinister, the skeletal remains of carnival games, the ghoulish faces of faded carousel animals, and looming above it all, the massive roller coaster, its tracks a twisted silhouette against the lightning-filled sky. The cries were clearer now, unmistakable, a dog in distress. But why here? And why tonight, in the middle of a storm? "Liam!" Mason called, sweeping the flashlight beam across the rain-soaked grounds. "Liam, where are you?" "There." Hannah pointed to a small figure running toward the base of the roller coaster. "Liam, stop! It's not safe!" But Liam kept running, as if drawn by an invisible thread. The roller coaster rose above him, a monstrous relic of the past, its metal frame groaning and creaking in the wind. As Mason and Hannah closed the distance, they could hear Liam's voice, soft yet determined, speaking to someone, or something, they couldn't yet see. "It's okay," he was saying. "We're here now. We'll help you." Mason's flashlight beam finally caught up with Liam, illuminating the scene before them, and what they saw made both parents freeze in their tracks. There, beneath the lowest part of the roller coaster track, where the cars would thunder past just feet above the ground, was a German shepherd. Her golden brown coat was soaked and matted, her amber eyes wide with fear, and around her neck was a heavy chain, padlocked to the metal support of the roller coaster track. But what made Hannah gasp was the dog's swollen belly. She was pregnant, heavily pregnant. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered, approaching slowly to avoid frightening the animal further. Who would do something like this? Liam was already kneeling beside the dog, his small hand gently stroking her wet fur. "I told you she needed help," he said, looking up at his parents with tears mixing with raindrops on his face. "She told me." Mason moved closer, his flashlight revealing more details of the cruel scene. The chain was thick and new. This was no accident, no case of a stray dog becoming entangled by chance. Someone had deliberately chained this pregnant animal to the roller coaster track. "We need to get her out of here," Mason said, examining the padlock. "Hannah, do you have a hairpin or something we could use to pick this?" Hannah shook her head, frantically searching her pockets. "Nothing? Maybe we could try to break the chain?" The dog whimpered, pressing closer to Liam as if seeking protection. The boy wrapped his arms around her neck, whispering comforting words that were lost in the storm. Then, a sound cut through the howling wind and rain. a sound that didn't belong in an abandoned amusement park. A mechanical groan, followed by the distinct click of electrical systems powering up. Mason's head snapped up, his face draining of color as lights began to flicker along the roller coaster track. Impossible. The park had been closed for years. The power had been cut off. Even if it hadn't been, the storm had knocked out electricity to the entire area. Yet the roller coaster was coming to life around them. "That's not possible," Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible over the growing mechanical noise. "The power is out everywhere." But the evidence was undeniable. Lights were illuminating the track, growing brighter by the second, and somewhere in the distance they could hear the unmistakable sound of roller coaster cars beginning to move. "Someone's turned it on," Mason realized, his voice tight with fear. "Someone wants to—" He couldn't finish the sentence, not with Liam there, but the implication was clear. Someone had chained a pregnant dog to the track and was now activating the roller coaster. This wasn't a cruel prank or an act of animal abuse. It was an attempted execution. "We need to get her out of here now," Hannah cried, pulling at the chain with bare hands, achieving nothing but pain as the metal links bit into her skin. The dog began to panic, sensing the danger even if she didn't understand its source. She pulled against the chain, whimpering and trying to flee, but the padlock held firm. Liam, with a child's strange clarity in moments of crisis, placed his hands on either side of the dog's face, forcing her to look at him. "It's okay," he said again, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. "I won't let them take you." The dog stopped struggling, her amber eyes locked with Liam's blue ones. And in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that transcended the normal boundaries between human and animal. She licked Liam's face once, a gesture of trust that broke Hannah's heart. The mechanical noises grew louder. The roller coaster was picking up speed. "Mason, do something!" Hannah screamed, panic overwhelming her. Mason looked around desperately for anything that could break the chain or the padlock. Finding nothing, he positioned himself between the track and his family, as if his body could somehow shield them from a speeding roller coaster. "Get back!" he shouted. "Both of you, get back now!" But Liam wouldn't move, and the dog couldn't. The thunder crashed again, and in that moment, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and lean, with rainwater streaming from a military-style jacket, the stranger moved with purpose toward them. "Move!" the man commanded, pushing past Mason and kneeling beside the chained dog. In his hand was a pair of bolt cutters, large, industrial-strength tools that seemed out of place for someone to be carrying through an abandoned amusement park in the middle of a storm. Without explanation or hesitation, the stranger positioned the bolt cutters around the chain and squeezed the handles with practiced strength. The chain resisted for a moment, then gave way with a loud snap. "Go!" the man shouted, grabbing the severed chain and pulling the dog toward them, away from the track. Mason didn't need to be told twice. He scooped Liam into his arms while Hannah and the stranger guided the terrified dog away from the roller coaster tracks. They had barely cleared the area when the roller coaster cars thundered past, the wind of their passage whipping their clothes and hair. The spot where the dog had been chained was now empty, but the implications of what had almost happened hung in the air between them, heavier than the storm clouds overhead. The dog collapsed a few yards away, her body shaking with exhaustion and fear. Liam wiggled out of his father's arms and knelt beside her again, his small hand stroking her wet fur with a tenderness that belied his years. "You're safe now," he whispered. "We won't let anyone hurt you." The stranger stood at a slight distance, watching them with an unreadable expression. The bolt cutters hung from one hand, water dripping from the metal. "Who are you?" Mason asked, positioning himself protectively between the stranger and his family. "And how did you happen to be here with bolt cutters exactly when we needed them?" The man's eyes, hard and assessing, moved from Mason to Hannah to Liam and finally to the dog. "Name's Logan," he said simply, "and I've been tracking her for 3 days." Hannah, who had been checking the dog for injuries, looked up sharply. "Tracking her? Why? Is she yours?" Logan shook his head, rain dripping from his short military-style haircut. "Number. But I know who she belongs to. And they're not the kind of people you want to mess with." A train horn blared in the distance, startling all of them, but there was no train track near the amusement park. The sound had come from the roller coaster, which was making another circuit, picking up speed as it headed back toward them. "We need to get out of here," Logan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Now, they know someone interfered. They'll be coming. Who? Mason demanded. Who would do something like this? Logan's expression darkened. The kind of people who chain a pregnant dog to a roller coaster track and turn it on during a lightning storm, he said grimly. The kind who won't like that we saved her. As if to emphasize his point, a car appeared on the road beside the amusement park, its headlights cutting through the rain. It slowed as it approached the park entrance. Too late, Logan muttered. They're already here. The dog whimpered, pressing closer to Liam, and in that moment, all of them realized that their night of terror was just beginning. Mason grabbed Hannah's arm, pulling her and Liam behind the dilapidated ticket booth. Logan followed, guiding the pregnant German shepherd with them. The headlights swept across the abandoned park as the car pulled into the gravel lot, its tires crunching over debris and puddles. Who are these people? Hannah whispered, her arms wrapped protectively around Liam, who refused to let go of the dog's matted fur. Logan's face hardened as he peered around the edge of the booth. Dog fighters. They use pregnant females to breed fighting dogs. When they're done with them, his voice trailed off, eyes darting to Liam. Mason understood the unspoken horror. So chaining her to the tracks was a message, Logan finished, to anyone who might interfere with their operation. The car doors opened and two men stepped out, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Their heavy boots splashed through puddles as they approached the roller coaster. Check the track, one of them barked. See if she's still there. Logan motioned for them all to stay down. The pregnant dog seemed to understand the danger, pressing her body low to the ground, not making a sound despite her evident fear. Liam stroked her head gently. What's your name? He whispered to the dog. I'm going to call you Nova, like a bright star in the darkness. The newly named Nova looked at Liam with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand every word. She licked his hand once, the gesture somehow both a thank you and a promise. We need to move, Logan whispered. Follow me. Stay low. They crept along the perimeter of the park, using abandoned game booths and broken rides as cover. The storm continued to rage, providing both concealment from sound and the occasional flash of lightning that threatened to expose them. Where are we going? Hannah asked, her voice barely audible. My truck is parked on the service road behind the park, Logan replied. If we can reach it without being seen. A shout cut through the storm. The chain's been cut. Find whoever did this. Run, Mason ordered, no longer caring about stealth. They sprinted through the rain, their feet slipping on the wet ground. Nova kept pace despite her condition, her survival instinct overriding her exhaustion. Mason led the way, Hannah right behind him, with Liam's hand clutched tightly in hers. Logan brought up the rear, constantly glancing back to ensure they weren't being followed. The service road appeared ahead of them, a narrow dirt path now turned to mud in the downpour. Logan pointed to an old pickup truck parked beneath a grove of trees. There! Go! They were halfway to the truck when a flashlight beam caught them, freezing them in its harsh glare. Hey! Stop right there! Logan reacted instantly, pushing Mason toward the truck. Get them out of here! Keys are in the ignition. Go! Before anyone could protest, Logan turned and charged toward the man with the flashlight, tackling him to the ground. The light went flying, landing in a puddle where it continued to shine, illuminating the struggle between the two men. Logan, Hannah cried, but Mason was already pulling her toward the truck. We can't help him. We need to get Liam and the dog to safety. They reached the truck, Mason yanking the driver's side door open and helping Hannah and Liam inside. Nova jumped in without prompting, her body pressed against Liam's as if determined to protect him. Mason turned the key, the engine roaring to life. Through the rain-streaked windshield, they could see Logan still fighting the man, but now a second figure was approaching from the darkness. We can't leave him, Hannah insisted. Mason gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. We don't have a choice. We have to protect Liam. As if hearing his name, Liam pressed his face against the window. Logan! He screamed, his voice breaking with fear. And then, something unexpected happened. Nova barked, a sharp, commanding sound that cut through the storm. She leaped from the truck before anyone could stop her and raced toward Logan, her pregnant belly bouncing with each stride. Nova, no! Liam cried, trying to follow, but Hannah held him back. The second man had reached Logan and his opponent, a metal pipe raised to strike. But before he could bring it down, Nova launched herself at him, her teeth sinking into his arm. The man screamed, dropping the pipe as he tried to shake the dog off. Logan, seeing his chance, delivered a knockout punch to his opponent and scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the fallen pipe and swung it at the second man, who was still struggling with Nova. The blow connected with a sickening crack, and the man crumpled to the ground. "Logan!" Mason shouted from the truck. "Come on!" Logan sprinted toward them, Nova right beside him. They had barely closed the truck doors when more headlights appeared at the entrance to the service road. "Go, go, go!" Logan urged, and Mason floored the accelerator. The truck fishtailed in the mud before finding traction, speeding away just as the second car reached the fallen men. In the rearview mirror, they could see more figures emerging, but they were already disappearing into the storm, the truck's taillights fading into the darkness. "They'll come after us," Logan said grimly, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. "They always do." Hannah, who had been checking Liam for injuries, looked up sharply. "Who are you really? How do you know so much about these people?" Logan's expression was unreadable in the dim light of the truck cab. "I was military, K-9 unit. Now I work with an underground network that rescues dogs from fighting rings." He reached over to stroke Nova's head. "We've been tracking her for days after a tip-off about a pregnant female stolen from a shelter." "But why chain her to the roller coaster?" Mason asked, his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road ahead. "Why not just—" He couldn't finish the sentence with Liam listening, but Logan understood. "It's a warning," he repeated. "They wanted to make an example of her. Send a message to anyone who might be thinking of interfering with their operation." Liam, who had been quietly stroking Nova's fur, suddenly gasped. "Mommy, Nova's shaking." Hannah turned to see the German Shepherd trembling, her body tense and rigid. "She's going into labor," she realized with horror. The stress must have triggered it. "We need to get her somewhere safe," Logan said. "Not just from the dog fighters, but for her to have her puppies." Mason nodded, already turning the truck toward home. "Our place. It's closest." "No," Logan countered. "That's the first place they'll look. They saw your faces. They'll track you down." "Then where?" Hannah demanded. "We can't just drive around with a dog giving birth in the back seat." Logan thought for a moment, then gave Mason directions to a location on the outskirts of town. They drove in tense silence, broken only by Nova's increasingly distressed whimpers and Liam's soft words of comfort. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, isolated cabin surrounded by trees. Despite the storm, it looked welcoming, with light spilling from its windows. "What is this place?" Mason asked as they parked. "Safe house," Logan answered simply. "For rescued animals and the people who help them." They hurried inside, Logan carrying Nova despite her size, her body now racked with contractions. The cabin was warm and surprisingly well equipped, with a large area set up like a veterinary clinic. A woman with gray-streaked hair looked up as they entered, her eyes widening at the sight of Nova. "Logan, what happened? Who are these people?" "Later, Marge," Logan said, laying Nova gently on a padded table. "She's in labor, early from the looks of it." Marge sprang into action, gathering towels and supplies. "How far along is she?" "A week, maybe 2 from full term," Logan estimated. "She's been through hell tonight." As Marge examined Nova, Hannah pulled Liam aside, trying to distract him from the birthing process that was about to unfold. But Liam wouldn't be moved. "I need to stay with her," he insisted, his small face set with determination beyond his years. "She needs me." And strangely, it seemed he was right. Nova, despite her pain, kept looking for Liam, calming only when he was in her line of sight. "Let him stay," Marge said, recognizing the bond between them. "She trusts him. That will help." What followed was a night none of them would ever forget. As the storm raged outside, Nova gave birth to 5 tiny puppies, perfect miniature versions of herself, blind and helpless, their wet fur darkening as Marge cleaned them. Liam watched in awe, tears streaming down his face as each new life entered the world. Nova, exhausted but determined, cleaned each puppy before allowing Marge to place them against her body to nurse. "They're beautiful," Liam whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny paw with a finger. "Look, Nova, you're a mommy now." The German Shepherd looked up at him with tired eyes filled with trust, then rested her head on her paws, her body curled protectively around her newborns. As the adrenaline of the night began to fade, the adults gathered in the cabin's small kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "These people won't just give up," Logan explained, nursing a cup of strong coffee. They've invested too much in their operation, and now they've seen all of you. They'll be looking. Hannah's face paled. Are you saying we're in danger? That Liam is in danger? Logan nodded grimly. I won't lie to you. These aren't people who forgive and forget. They've killed to protect their business before. We should call the police, Mason suggested. We will, Logan agreed. But you need to understand, this ring has connections, money to buy influence. The local force might not be enough. So what do we do? Hannah asked, her voice small but determined. Stay here tonight, Marge said, joining the conversation. The cabin is secure, off the grid. We have people watching the perimeter. Tomorrow, we'll contact people I trust on the force. Mason looked at Hannah, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, he nodded. Okay, one night, but tomorrow we need a real plan. We have lives, jobs, Liam has school. One night, Logan agreed. That's all I'm asking. They made makeshift beds in the cabin's small living room, Liam refusing to leave Nova's side. He curled up on a blanket beside her and her puppies, his small body fitting perfectly in the curve of Nova's larger form. I'll protect you, he whispered to the dog and her babies, just like you protected Logan. Nova licked his face once before closing her eyes, her body relaxing into sleep. Hannah watched from the doorway, her heart both full and heavy. It's like they've known each other forever, she said softly to Mason, who stood beside her. He always wanted a dog, Mason replied, though I never imagined it would happen like this. What are we going to do? Hannah asked, voicing the question that had been hanging between them all night. Mason put his arm around her shoulders. Whatever we have to protect our family. His gaze lingered on Liam and Nova. All of our family. They retreated to their makeshift bed, exhaustion finally overtaking them, but sleep was fitful, haunted by images of chains and roller coasters and men with flashlights cutting through the darkness. Outside, the storm began to fade, the first hints of dawn lightening the eastern sky. But as one threat receded, another was just beginning to take shape. In the pale light of early morning, Logan stood guard at the cabin window, his military training evident in his alert posture. Marge joined him, handing him a fresh cup of coffee. You know they won't stop, she said quietly. Logan nodded. I know, but neither will I. Inside the small veterinary area, Liam slept peacefully, his head resting against Nova's side, one hand touching a tiny puppy. The German Shepherd's eyes were open, alert despite her exhaustion, her gaze fixed on the door, as if she too understood that danger was still stalking them. One of the puppies, the smallest of the litter, began to wriggle away from its siblings. Nova nudged it gently back toward the warmth of her body, her mothering instincts strong despite her ordeal. The puppy, as if sensing its mother's concern, settled back down, its tiny body rising and falling with rapid breaths. Mason and Hannah, unable to sleep any longer, joined Logan and Marge by the window. We need a plan, Mason said. A real one. These people have seen our faces. They know what Liam looks like. Logan's expression was grim. I know people who can help. People who specialize in making problems like this disappear. What kind of people? Hannah asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Logan met her gaze steadily. The kind you don't want to know about unless you have to. But they're good people. They protect witnesses against cartels, terrorists. They can protect you against dogfighters. The weight of their situation settled over them. In the space of one stormy night, their ordinary lives had been upended, thrust into a world of danger none of them had imagined possible. And what about Nova? Hannah asked. And her puppies? Logan glanced toward the room where the German Shepherd lay with Liam. They'll need protection too. These people won't give up on her easily. She's valuable to them, her bloodline, her puppies. Mason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and fatigue. So we just disappear? Leave our lives behind? Over a dog? Not just a dog, Hannah corrected him gently. Over Liam, over our safety. Before Mason could respond, a sound cut through the early morning quiet, the crunch of tires on gravel. Logan was at the window instantly, his body tense. Car coming up the drive, black SUV, windows tinted. Marge moved quickly to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal a shotgun. Friends or foes? Don't know yet, Logan replied, reaching for the weapon. But we're about to find out. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted, tension replacing exhaustion. Hannah rushed to where Liam slept with Nova, ready to protect her son at any cost. As the SUV pulled up outside the cabin, all of them held their breath, waiting to see if the new day would bring rescue or a continuation of their nightmare. What will happen when the mysterious SUV arrives? Will Liam's special connection with Nova be enough to save both families? Comment below with what you think happens next. Logan positioned himself by the window, shotgun ready. Mason stood protectively in front of Hannah and the doorway to where Liam and Nova were. Marge moved to the back door, ensuring they had an escape route if needed. The SUV's engine cut off. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, with short dark hair and the confident posture of law enforcement. "Police?" Hannah whispered hopefully. Logan shook his head, his grip on the shotgun not relaxing. "Maybe. Or they want us to think that?" The woman approached the cabin alone, hands clearly visible at her sides. When she reached the porch, she called out, "Logan, it's Detective Rivera. Marge called me." Logan and Marge exchanged glances. "She's one of the good ones," Marge said quietly. "I contacted her while you were all sleeping." Logan lowered the shotgun slightly but didn't put it away. He opened the door just enough to see the woman's face, confirmation that she was who she claimed to be. "Detective," he acknowledged, "kind of early for a social call." "This isn't social, and you know it," Rivera replied, her eyes taking in the shotgun and Logan's defensive posture. "Marge filled me in. Dogfighting ring, pregnant German shepherd, family in danger. Mind if I come in?" Logan stepped back, allowing her entry but keeping himself between her and the room where Liam and Nova were. "You alone?" "For now," Rivera said, removing her jacket to reveal a shoulder holster and badge. "But I've got backup on standby. Didn't want to spook anyone by rolling up with a full tactical team." Mason stepped forward. "I'm Mason White. This is my wife Hannah. Our son Liam is in the other room with the dog, Nova." Rivera nodded. "Angela Rivera, major crimes. I've been tracking this dog fighting ring for months. Bastards are well connected and careful, hard to catch in the act." Her gaze shifted to Logan. "Until now, apparently." "We didn't catch them fighting dogs," Hannah pointed out. "We found Nova chained to a roller coaster track. They were trying to kill her." "And send a message," Logan added. "They know someone's been interfering with their operation, rescuing dogs before they can be used in fights." Rivera's expression hardened. "People like you mean?" Logan didn't deny it. "Someone has to." "And now they've seen this family," Marge interjected. "They're in danger too." Rivera sighed, running a hand through her short hair. "Okay. First things first. I need statements from all of you. Everything you saw, everyone you can identify. Then we need to talk protection." "What kind of protection?" Mason asked. "The kind where you don't go home for a few days," Rivera said bluntly. "These people don't mess around. If they think you can identify them, they'll come for you." Hannah's face paled. "But our jobs, Liam's school—" "All replaceable," Rivera interrupted gently. "Your lives aren't—" A small voice came from the doorway. "Is Nova in trouble?" They all turned to see Liam standing there, his hair tousled from sleep, eyes wide with concern. Rivera's expression softened immediately. "Hey there, you must be Liam. And no, Nova's not in trouble. The bad guys who tried to hurt her are in trouble." Liam seemed to consider this. "They're coming back, aren't they? I can feel it. Nova can too." The adults exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to the boy's uncanny intuition. Rivera knelt to Liam's level. "We're going to make sure those bad guys can't hurt Nova or her puppies. Or you and your parents. That's my job." Liam studied her face intently, then nodded, apparently satisfied with what he saw there. "Nova had her babies," he announced. 5 of them. They're really small." "That's wonderful," Rivera said, genuine warmth in her voice. "Can I see them?" Liam looked to his parents for permission. When Hannah nodded, he took Rivera's hand and led her to the makeshift veterinary area. Nova raised her head as they entered, her amber eyes watching Rivera carefully. The puppies were nestled against her belly, tiny and vulnerable. "She's beautiful," Rivera said softly. "And so are her puppies." Nova, seeming to sense that Rivera wasn't a threat, lowered her head but kept her eyes on the detective. This one's the smallest, Liam said, pointing to the runt of the litter. I named him Star because he has a white spot on his head that looks like a star. Rivera glanced at Liam, a question in her eyes. Mason approached her, concern etched on his face. He's been naming them all, Hannah explained from the doorway. That one's Star, then there's Luna, Comet, Orion, and Astro, all space names. They're good names, Rivera said, straightening up. Now, let's figure out how to keep them all safe. They returned to the main room, where Rivera laid out their options. We can place you in protective custody. Hotel room, police guard, not comfortable, but secure. Mason shook his head. For how long? Days? Weeks? We can't live like that. Until we can build a case and make arrests, Rivera admitted, which could take time. What about Nova and her puppies? Liam asked, his main concern clear. Logan spoke up. I know people, places off the grid where they would be safe. But I need to stay with Nova, Liam insisted, his bottom lip trembling. She needs me. The adults fell silent, the complexity of their situation weighing heavily. They needed to protect both a family and a new mother with 5 newborn puppies, all while hiding from dangerous criminals who would stop at nothing to silence them. What if we all go? Hannah suggested suddenly. To Logan's off-the-grid place. We'd be safe, and Liam could stay with Nova. Logan raised an eyebrow. It's not exactly family-friendly. Remote cabin in the mountains, minimal amenities. Better than a hotel room under police guard, Mason pointed out. And if these people are as connected as you say, maybe further from town is better. Rivera frowned. It would make my job harder, protecting you, building the case. But it would keep everyone together, Marge said. Nova needs familiar faces right now. The stress of separation could be dangerous for her and the puppies. A tense silence fell as they all considered the options. Finally, Rivera nodded slowly. Okay, but I'd need to know exactly where you are, and you'd need a way to contact me immediately if anything happens. I can set that up, Logan said. Satellite phone, security system, the works. And I'll need statements first, Rivera insisted. From all of you, every detail you can remember. For the next hour, they recounted the events of the previous night. The mysterious crying that Liam had heard, finding Nova chained to the roller coaster track, the miraculous rescue seconds before the coaster would have killed her, and the confrontation with the men who had come to check on their cruel handiwork. Rivera took detailed notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When they finished, she looked grim but determined. This is solid, not enough for an arrest yet, but a good start. I'll need you to look at some photos, see if you can identify the men you saw. She pulled out a tablet and showed them a series of mugshots. Both Mason and Logan identified one of the men from the park. Victor Ramirez, Rivera confirmed. Small-time enforcer for the dog fighting ring. Not the boss, but connected. This helps. While the adults continued their discussion, Liam returned to Nova's side. He sat cross-legged beside her nest of blankets, gently stroking her head. We're going to a safe place, he told her quietly. All of us together. No one will hurt you or your babies there. Nova licked his hand, her eyes trusting. One of the puppies, Star, squirmed away from his siblings and crawled toward Liam on wobbly legs, eyes still closed, but somehow sensing his presence. Liam carefully picked up the tiny puppy, cradling him against his chest. You're going to be okay too, he whispered. I promise. Hannah appeared in the doorway, her heart melting at the sight of her son with Nova and the tiny puppy. Detective Rivera wants us to get ready to leave, she said softly. We need to pack up Nova and her puppies. Liam nodded seriously. They'll need blankets and milk for Nova so she can feed them. Marge is taking care of all that, Hannah assured him. Logan's making calls to set up the safe house. Outside, the morning sun had fully risen, casting long shadows through the trees surrounding the cabin. Rivera stood by her SUV, making calls of her own, her expression tense as she coordinated with her department. Mason approached her, concern etched on his face. Are we doing the right thing, taking Liam away from everything familiar? Rivera pocketed her phone. Mr. White, I won't lie to you. These people are dangerous. Last month we found a witness with his throat cut. His family, too. Her eyes softened at Mason's shocked expression. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because you need to understand what we're dealing with. Mason swallowed hard. So, this isn't an overreaction. No, Rivera said firmly. It's not. In fact, if I had my way, you'd be in witness protection already. But I understand why Logan's option makes more sense for your situation. Inside the cabin, preparations were underway. Marge had gathered supplies for Nova and her puppies, formula in case Nova couldn't produce enough milk, a special bed that would keep the puppies contained and warm during transport, medications, and other necessities. Logan was loading his truck, his movements efficient and practiced. We'll take 2 vehicles, he explained to Hannah. You, Mason, and Liam will follow me in Rivera's SUV. Nova and the puppies will ride with me. Safer that way in case we need to split up. Split up? Hannah repeated, alarm in her voice. Logan's expression was grim. Just a precaution. Better to be over-prepared. By mid-morning, they were ready to leave. Marge would stay behind to coordinate with Rivera, who would join them at the safe house later after following up on leads. Saying goodbye to Liam was the hardest part for Nova. She whined anxiously as Logan carefully loaded her and her puppies into a special compartment in his truck, her eyes constantly searching for the boy. It's okay, girl, Logan soothed. He'll be right behind us. You'll see him soon. Liam was equally distressed, tears streaming down his face as he was guided to Rivera's SUV. She thinks I'm leaving her, he cried. Nova, I'm coming too. Hannah held him close. She knows, sweetheart, Logan told her. We'll be right behind them the whole way. As they pulled out of the driveway, Liam pressed his face against the window, his eyes locked on Logan's truck ahead of them. Nova's face appeared briefly in the truck's rear window, her amber eyes finding Liam's blue ones in a moment of connection that transcended the space between them. The journey was long and tense. They took back roads and switched directions often, Logan occasionally checking to ensure they weren't being followed. Twice they stopped briefly for Logan to check on Nova and her puppies, allowing Liam a few precious moments to reassure the anxious mother. By late afternoon, they were deep in the mountains, following a narrow dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches forming a canopy overhead that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. Are we lost? Mason asked as they bounced over another rut in the road. Hannah shook her head. Logan knows where he's going. Finally, the road opened into a small clearing. Nestled against the mountainside was a cabin, larger than Marge's but still modest. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and a small stream ran nearby. It looked peaceful, isolated, safe. Logan parked his truck and was immediately helping Nova out, the mother dog anxious to check that her puppies were all okay after the journey. Liam was out of Rivera's SUV before it had fully stopped, running to Nova's side. We're here, he told her, kneeling beside the dog. This is the safe place I told you about. The cabin was rustic but well equipped. 2 bedrooms, a living area with a fireplace, a small kitchen, and, to everyone's surprise, modern amenities including running water, electricity from the solar panels, and even basic internet. Used to be a ranger station, Logan explained as he gave them a tour. Some friends and I converted it for special cases. Special cases like us? Hannah asked, inspecting the fully stocked kitchen. Logan nodded. People and animals who need to disappear for a while. They settled in quickly, creating a comfortable nest for Nova and her puppies in the living room where Liam could stay close to them. Logan set up a security system that would alert them to anyone approaching the cabin, and Mason checked that the satellite phone was working. As night fell, a strange sense of calm descended on the group. They were far from home, hiding from dangerous criminals, their lives completely upended, and yet, gathered around the fireplace with Nova nursing her puppies and Liam telling them stories in his childish voice, there was an undeniable feeling of rightness. How long do you think we'll need to stay here? Hannah asked Logan as they prepared a simple dinner. Logan considered the question. Depends on Rivera. How quickly she can build a case, make arrests. Could be days, could be weeks. Hannah nodded, accepting the uncertainty with surprising grace. Liam seems happy at least. I've never seen him so connected to anything before. They both looked at the boy, who was lying on his stomach beside Nova, carefully stroking each puppy as he continued his made-up story about star dogs who protected the universe. Some kids have that gift, Logan said, a natural bond with animals. In the K-9 unit, we called them whisperers. They could communicate with dogs in ways the rest of us couldn't understand. You think that's what Liam has? This gift? Logan nodded. How else could he have heard Nova crying from so far away? How else could he have known she was pregnant before we found her? The question hung in the air, unanswered but undeniable. There was something special about Liam's connection with Nova, something that went beyond normal human-animal bonds. As they ate dinner, Logan shared more about his work rescuing dogs from fighting rings. "It started after I left the military," he explained. "My K9 partner Rex was killed in action, saving my life." His voice caught slightly. "When I got home, I needed purpose. Found out about these fighting rings. Couldn't stand the thought of dogs being treated that way." "So you became a vigilante dog rescuer," Mason said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Logan shrugged. "Someone has to. The police try, but they're limited by laws, procedures. These rings are sophisticated. They move locations, pay off officials, intimidate witnesses." "Like they tried to intimidate us," Hannah said quietly. "Exactly," Logan nodded. "But they didn't count on your boy's connection with Nova, or your courage in saving her." After dinner, as Liam dozed beside Nova, the adults gathered on the cabin's porch. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the mountain sky, the air cool and fresh. "Rivera should have called by now," Logan said, checking his watch. As if on cue, the satellite phone rang. Mason answered, putting it on speaker. "You're all okay?" Rivera's voice came through, slightly distorted. "We're fine," Mason confirmed. "The cabin is secure. Nova and her puppies are doing well. What's happening there?" There was a pause before Rivera spoke again. "We identified the second man from last night, traced him to a property outside town, found evidence of dog fighting, chains, medicines, training equipment, but no dogs and no people. They're clearing out," Logan realized. "They know we're onto them." "Yes," Rivera sounded frustrated, "but we've got APBs out on Ramirez and his associate, and we're monitoring known associates. It's just a matter of time." "So we stay put," Mason said. "For now, yes. I'll check in tomorrow. Stay alert." After the call ended, a heavy silence fell over the group. The reality of their situation settled in. They were fugitives not by choice but by necessity, hiding not just from criminals, but from a return to normal life. "I should check the perimeter," Logan said, standing up. "Make sure everything's secure for the night." As he stepped off the porch, he paused, his posture suddenly alert. In the distance, barely audible, was the sound of an engine. "Get inside," he ordered, his voice low and urgent. "Now." Hannah and Mason exchanged alarmed glances before hurrying into the cabin. Logan followed, locking the door behind them. "What is it?" Hannah whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Probably nothing," Logan said, but his actions contradicted his words as he checked his shotgun and moved to the window. "But we're not taking chances." The sound grew louder, definitely a vehicle, coming up the mountain road toward the cabin. Mason moved to where Liam slept beside Nova, ready to wake him if necessary. Hannah stood frozen in the center of the room, torn between fear and the need to appear calm for her son's sake. Nova was awake, her head raised, ears forward. She made no sound, but her body was tense, ready to protect her puppies at any cost. The vehicle lights appeared through the trees, sweeping across the cabin as it approached. Logan positioned himself by the window, shotgun ready but out of sight. "Police?" Mason asked hopefully. Logan shook his head. "Rivera would have called first." The vehicle stopped just outside the clearing. Its lights went out, plunging the area back into darkness broken only by starlight. The engine died, and then there was silence. They waited, barely breathing, for what would happen next. Has the danger caught up to them already? Who is in the mysterious vehicle approaching the cabin? Tell us your theories about what happens next. A car door opened, then another. Low voices murmured in the darkness, too quiet to make out words. Footsteps crunched on gravel, moving toward the cabin. Logan motioned for Mason to take Hannah and Liam to the back bedroom. Mason nodded, scooping up his still-sleeping son, while Hannah quickly gathered the puppies in a basket. Nova followed silently, her protective instinct overriding any anxiety. Once his companions were safely out of the main room, Logan positioned himself by the door, shotgun raised. The footsteps grew closer, stopping on the porch. Then, a knock, 3 quick taps followed by 2 slow ones. Logan's shoulders relaxed slightly. He lowered the shotgun and moved to the door, opening it just a crack. "Password?" he demanded. "Blue mountains rise at dawn," a woman's voice replied. Logan opened the door wider, revealing two figures standing on the porch. A middle-aged woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun, and a younger man whose military bearing matched Logan's own. "Elena," Logan acknowledged the woman. "Miguel. Wasn't expecting you." "Rivera sent us," Elena explained, stepping inside. "Said you might need backup." Miguel followed, carrying several heavy bags. His eyes immediately scanned the cabin, assessing exits and vantage points with professional precision. "The family?" Elena asked. "Back bedroom with the dog and puppies," Logan replied. "Let me get them." When he returned with Mason, Hannah, and a now-awake Liam, introductions were made quickly. Elena was a former trauma surgeon who now worked exclusively for the underground network rescuing fighting dogs, and occasionally their human allies. Miguel had served in the same K-9 unit as Logan, leaving the military after his own partner had been killed in a training accident that he suspected was actually murder. "Rivera said they're closing in on the ringleaders," Elena explained as she unpacked medical supplies. "But there's been chatter. They know someone saw their operation. They're looking—" "For us?" Hannah asked, her arm tightening around Liam's shoulders. Elena hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but they don't know where you are. That's why we're here. Extra security while Rivera builds her case." "How long?" Mason demanded. "How long do we have to hide?" Miguel and Elena exchanged glances. "A few days," Miguel said finally. "Maybe a week. These people have money, connections, but they're not invincible." Liam, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "They're coming," he said matter-of-factly. "Nova says they're already looking for us in the mountains." The adults fell silent, unsure how to respond to the boy's eerie declaration. Elena knelt to Liam's level. "Nova told you that?" she asked gently, no trace of condescension in her voice. Liam nodded solemnly. "She can feel them. They're angry because she got away, because she had her baby somewhere safe." Instead of dismissing the boy's words, Elena looked to Nova, who sat alert beside Liam, her amber eyes fixed on the cabin door, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "I believe you," Elena said to Liam. "Animals sense things we can't. That's why we're here, to make sure you and Nova and her puppies stay safe." Miguel was already moving, checking windows and doors, setting up additional security measures he'd brought with him. "We should establish a perimeter," he told Logan. "Motion sensors at the edge of the clearing, surveillance on the road." Logan nodded. "I've got some equipment in the storage shed. We can set it up now." As the men went outside to secure the area, Elena began a medical check of Nova and her puppies. "They're doing remarkably well," she told Hannah, gently examining each tiny puppy, especially considering the stress Nova endured right before birth. "Liam hasn't left her side," Hannah said, watching as her son carefully stroked Star, the runt of the litter. "It's like he knows exactly what she needs before she needs it." Elena smiled. "Some people have that gift. In many indigenous cultures, they would be considered specially blessed. Animal whisperers, they'd call them." "That's what Logan said," Hannah admitted. "I've never seen anything like it. The way Nova looks at him, like she understands every word he says." "Maybe she does," Elena suggested. "Dogs are far more intelligent and empathic than most people give them credit for. And they can sense goodness in humans, especially children." Outside, Logan and Miguel worked efficiently, their military training evident in their coordinated movements. They set up motion sensors in a wide perimeter around the cabin and established surveillance points with clear sightlines to the access road. "You think they'll find us?" Miguel asked as they worked. Logan's expression was grim. "Eventually, yes. These people don't give up easily. That's why we need to be ready." "The boy," Miguel said hesitantly. "What he said about the dog telling him they're coming? You believe that?" Logan paused, considering the question. "I've seen enough in this world to know there are things we can't explain. The way he connected with Nova from the beginning, hearing her cries from miles away, knowing she was pregnant, finding her in that storm, that's not coincidence." Miguel nodded thoughtfully. "In my grandmother's village in Mexico, they would say he has el don, the gift, the ability to speak with animals in their own language." "Whatever it is," Logan said, "I'm glad he's on our side." Back inside the cabin, Elena had prepared a simple but hearty meal. As they ate, she and Miguel shared more about the network they were part of, People from all walks of life, united by their determination to end dogfighting and protect its victims, both canine and human. "How did you get involved?" Hannah asked Elena. The older woman's eyes darkened with memory. "My daughter had a pit bull, sweetest creature you'd ever meet. Never showed aggression even when provoked. One day men came to our neighborhood looking for dogs to steal for their fighting ring. They took him." Her voice caught. "When we reported it to police, they said there was nothing they could do. 2 weeks later, my daughter found him. Or what was left of him, dumped in a garbage bag behind our house." The table fell silent, the horror of Elena's story hanging in the air. "What happened to your daughter?" Hannah asked finally. "She couldn't bear it," Elena said simply. "Took her own life 6 months later." She raised her eyes, fierce determination replacing grief. "That's when I joined the network, to make sure no other mother loses a child that way." After dinner, they established a watch rotation. Logan would take first shift, followed by Miguel, then Mason, who insisted on taking his turn despite his lack of military training. As they prepared for bed, Hannah couldn't help noticing Liam's exhaustion. Despite his protests, she insisted he sleep in the bedroom rather than on the floor beside Nova. "She'll be right here in the living room," Hannah promised. "You can see her first thing in the morning." To her surprise, Nova solved the dilemma herself. As Hannah tucked Liam into bed, the German Shepherd padded into the room, carefully carrying the smallest puppy, Star, in her mouth. She placed the tiny creature gently on the bed beside Liam, then returned to the living room only to come back moments later with another puppy. One by one, she moved her entire litter to Liam's bed. "I think she's made her decision," Elena observed from the doorway, her expression soft with wonder. "She wants her puppies with Liam." "Is it safe?" Hannah asked. "They're so small." Elena nodded. "Nova trusts Liam completely. She knows he'll be careful." So, it was decided. Liam fell asleep with 5 tiny puppies nestled against him, and Nova lying protectively at the foot of the bed, her amber eyes fixed on the bedroom door. The night passed quietly. Logan's watch was uneventful, as was Miguel's. But when Mason took over at 3 a.m., something changed. Nova, who had been sleeping peacefully, suddenly raised her head, her ears pricked forward. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Mason, who had been checking the security camera feeds on a tablet, looked up sharply. "What is it, girl?" he whispered. Nova stood, her body tense. She moved to the bedroom door, looking back at Mason with an urgency he couldn't misinterpret. Mason woke Logan with a touch on his shoulder. "Nova's sensing something," he whispered, "but the cameras aren't showing anything." Logan was instantly alert. "Wake the others," he instructed. Quietly. Within minutes, everyone was up, moving with hushed efficiency. Liam, still groggy with sleep, helped Elena gather the puppies into a specially designed carrier, while Hannah packed essential supplies. Miguel and Logan checked their weapons and the exits. "What exactly are we doing?" Mason asked, his voice low. "The sensors haven't triggered. The cameras are clear." "Trusting Nova," Logan replied simply. "If she senses danger, there's danger." Just as they finished preparations, Liam gasped. "They're here," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Nova says they're in the trees, moving around the sensors." Logan immediately switched off the cabin lights and moved to the window, using night vision goggles to scan the darkness. For several long moments, he saw nothing. Then, movement. A shadow separating from the trees, followed by another. And another. "He's right," Logan confirmed grimly. "At least 3 figures approaching from the east. They're avoiding the sensors somehow." "How did they find us?" Hannah whispered, clutching Liam close. "Doesn't matter now," Miguel said. "We need to move. There's a service tunnel behind the storage shed. Old mining passage. Leads to a ravine about half a mile away. We have a vehicle stashed there for emergencies." Elena was already guiding Hannah and Liam toward the back door, the puppy carrier secured against her chest. Nova followed, silent and alert, seeming to understand the need for absolute quiet. As they slipped out the rear of the cabin, Logan and Miguel remained behind to cover their escape. Mason hesitated, torn between staying to help and protecting his family. "Go," Logan urged him. "Your family needs you. We'll be right behind you." Outside, the night was cold and clear, stars brilliant in the mountain sky. Elena led them swiftly through the trees behind the cabin to a small camouflaged shed. Inside, She moved aside what appeared to be a solid wall, revealing a narrow tunnel entrance. "Quickly now," she whispered, handing Mason a flashlight. "Follow the tunnel straight through. Don't stop, don't look back. We'll be right behind you." Mason nodded, taking the flashlight in Liam's hand. "Stay close, buddy," he told his son, "and quiet, like a ninja." Despite the danger, Liam managed a small smile at his father's attempt to make their escape feel like an adventure, rather than a flight from killers. They entered the tunnel, the beam of the flashlight revealing rough-hewn rock walls and a narrow but level path. Hannah followed, with Nova padding silently beside her, the dog's body occasionally brushing against her leg as if offering reassurance. Behind them, Elena secured the tunnel entrance before following, the puppy carrier held carefully to avoid jostling its precious cargo. They had gone perhaps 100 yards when the distant sound of gunfire echoed through the tunnel. Liam froze, his hand tightening on Mason's. "Logan and Miguel," he whispered, fear evident in his voice. "They'll be okay," Mason assured him, though his own heart raced with concern. "They know what they're doing. We need to keep moving." They continued forward, the tunnel gradually sloping downward. The air grew cooler and damper, water occasionally dripping from the ceiling. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only 15 minutes, they reached a heavy metal door. Mason pushed it open cautiously, revealing a narrow ravine bathed in starlight. A rugged SUV was parked on a barely visible trail, camouflage netting partially covering it. "This is it," Elena confirmed, catching up to them. "Get in, I'll drive." "What about Logan and Miguel?" Hannah asked as she helped Liam into the back seat. Elena's expression was grim as she secured the puppy carrier in the vehicle. "They'll follow the protocol, secondary extraction point, 5 miles south. We'll meet them there." As they settled into the SUV, Nova suddenly stiffened, a low growl emanating from her throat. Her eyes were fixed on the tunnel entrance, ears forward in alert. "Someone's coming," Liam translated, his voice barely audible. Elena didn't hesitate. She jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine, its noise seemingly thunderous in the quiet ravine. "Get down," she ordered. "All of you." Mason pulled Liam and Hannah to the floor of the back seat, his body covering theirs. Nova pressed herself against them, her body forming an additional shield over Liam. Elena threw the SUV into gear and accelerated away from the tunnel just as a figure emerged, not Logan or Miguel, but a stranger with a gun. The man raised his weapon, but Elena was already executing a sharp turn, sending the vehicle bouncing over rough terrain and out of his line of fire. A shot rang out, the bullet pinging off the rear bumper, then another, this one shattering the back window. Glass showered over them, but Elena didn't slow down, navigating the treacherous mountain trail with skill born of practice and desperation. "Is everyone okay?" she called over her shoulder. "We're fine," Mason replied, though his heart was pounding so hard he felt it might burst from his chest. "Liam? Hannah?" "I'm okay, Daddy," Liam whispered. "Nova protected me." Indeed, the German Shepherd had positioned herself directly over the boy when the shots were fired, her body creating a shield between him and any potential bullets. "The puppies?" Liam asked, concern for them overriding his own fear. "They're fine," Elena assured him, the carrier still secured beside her. Not even awake, from the sound of it. They drove in tense silence, the vehicle bouncing over the rough mountain terrain. Elena navigated with confidence, taking turns and forks in the trail that seemed invisible until they were upon them. After about 20 minutes, she pulled into a small clearing surrounded by dense trees. A rocky outcrop provided natural cover on one side, a small stream on the other. She cut the engine, but left the keys in the ignition. "This is the rendezvous point," she explained. "If Logan and Miguel made it out, they'll meet us here." "And if they didn't?" Hannah asked, voicing the fear they all shared. Elena's expression was somber. "Then we have another protocol, another safe house." They waited in tense silence, every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig causing them to flinch. Nova remained alert, her eyes scanning the darkness, occasionally tilting her head as if listening to something beyond human hearing. An hour passed, then another. No sign of Logan or Miguel. "We should go," Elena finally said, her voice heavy with resignation. "If they were coming, they'd be here by now." "No," Liam protested. "Nova says we need to wait. She can feel them." The adults exchanged glances, uncertain whether to trust a child's intuition or a dog's over practical safety concerns. 5 more minutes, Elena conceded. Then we have to move. It's not safe to stay in one place too long. Those 5 minutes stretched with agonizing slowness. Liam sat with his hand buried in Nova's fur, his eyes closed as if in deep concentration. The German Shepherd remained perfectly still, except for her ears, which swiveled occasionally toward different sounds in the forest. Just as Elena was about to start the engine, Nova's head snapped up, her body alert but not tense. A moment later, the faint sound of someone approaching reached their ears, not the stealthy movement of pursuers, but the deliberate steps of someone who wanted to be heard. "Password," Elena called softly into the darkness, her hand on her weapon. "Blue mountains rise at dawn," came the reply, Logan's voice, though strained. He emerged from the trees, supporting Miguel, whose left arm was soaked with blood. "Thank God," Elena breathed, rushing to help them. "What happened?" "Ambush," Logan grunted as they eased Miguel into the vehicle. They knew exactly where the cabin was, had the layout memorized. "How?" Mason demanded, helping Elena examine Miguel's wound. "Only explanation is they had inside information," Logan replied grimly. "Someone in the network must have talked." The implications of this hung heavily in the air. If their underground network had been compromised, nowhere was truly safe. "How bad is he?" Hannah asked, nodding toward Miguel. "Through and through," Elena replied, already applying a field dressing to his shoulder. "Missed anything vital. He'll be okay with proper care." "Where to now?" Mason asked. Logan and Elena exchanged looks, a silent communication passing between them. "There's one more safe house," Logan said finally. "One that nobody knows about except the two of us. Not even Rivera." "Can we trust her?" Hannah asked, the question painful but necessary. "I believe so," Logan said carefully. "But at this point, we trust no one until we know how they found us." As dawn broke over the mountains, they were driving again, this time with Logan at the wheel. The new safe house, he explained, was an old hunting cabin that had belonged to his grandfather. It was remote, off any maps, with no road access for the last 5 miles. They would have to hike in, carrying Nova's puppies and their supplies. "Can Miguel make it?" Elena asked, concern evident in her voice. Logan glanced at the injured man, who was pale but conscious in the back seat. "We don't have much choice." They abandoned the SUV in a small town 70 miles away, switching to a battered pickup truck that Logan purchased with cash from a farmer who asked no questions. From there, they drove back into the mountains, following increasingly narrow and unmaintained roads until even those disappeared. "End of the line," Logan announced, parking the truck in a dense grove of trees. "From here, we walk." The hike was grueling, especially for Hannah and Mason, who were unused to mountain terrain. Miguel struggled valiantly despite his injury, refusing assistance except on the steepest sections. Liam, to everyone's surprise, kept pace without complaint, drawing strength from Nova, who never left his side. The German Shepherd seemed to have adopted a protective role over the entire group, ranging ahead to scout the path, then circling back to check on her puppies, which were being carried in a specially designed backpack by Elena. By mid-afternoon, they reached the cabin, a small, weathered structure nestled into the mountainside, nearly invisible among the trees. Unlike the previous safe house, this one was truly primitive. No electricity, no running water, just 4 walls, a roof, and a stone fireplace. "Home sweet home," Logan said grimly as he unlocked the heavy wooden door. "At least for now." Inside, the cabin was Spartan, but clean. Logan and Elena quickly established a medical area for Miguel, a separate space for Nova and her puppies, and sleeping arrangements for everyone else. Mason and Hannah worked to get a fire started in the fireplace, while Liam helped Nova settle her puppies in a nest made from blankets. As night fell, they gathered around the fire, exhaustion etched on every face. The events of the past 48 hours had been a nightmare, from finding Nova chained to the roller coaster track to fleeing for their lives through mountain tunnels and forests. "What now?" Hannah asked, her voice small in the firelit darkness. Logan stared into the flames, his expression hard to read. "We wait. Elena will hike out tomorrow, contact Rivera from a secure location. Find out what happened, who talked. And then," Mason pressed, "then we end this," Logan said simply. "One way or another." Later that night, as everyone else slept, Liam sat beside Nova's nest, gently stroking each puppy as they nursed. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the German shepherd. "I'm sorry bad people are trying to hurt you and your babies." Nova looked up at him, her amber eyes reflecting the dying firelight. She licked his hand once, then rested her head on his knee, a gesture of trust and forgiveness that brought tears to the boy's eyes. "I won't let them get you," Liam promised, his small voice fierce with determination. "Never again." As he spoke, Star, the smallest puppy, squirmed away from his siblings and crawled blindly toward Liam, his tiny nose working to catch the boy's scent. Liam gently scooped him up, cradling the puppy against his chest. "You're going to be brave and strong," he told the tiny creature, "just like your mom." In the shadowy corner of the cabin, unnoticed by Liam, Logan watched the scene with a mixture of wonder and resolve. The bond between the boy and Nova was unlike anything he had ever witnessed, a connection that transcended words, that seemed to operate on some deeper, more primal level of understanding. In that moment, Logan made a silent vow of his own, that no matter what it took, no matter the personal cost, he would ensure that Liam, Nova, and her puppies survived this ordeal. The alternative was unthinkable. Outside, the mountain night was alive with sounds. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant howl of a coyote. And somewhere, much farther away, men were searching, their determination fueled by greed and anger, their target a German shepherd mother, and the humans who had dared to save her. The battle had only just begun. Will the family be able to escape their pursuers? Who betrayed them, and why? Share your predictions about the next part of this heartbreaking story. 3 days passed in the remote cabin. Elena had hiked out as planned, taking a circuitous route to avoid detection before reaching a small town where she could contact Rivera securely. She returned with troubling news. "They've set up roadblocks on every major road out of the mountains," she reported as they gathered around the fireplace. "Rivera says they're using the cover story of a manhunt for escaped convicts, but it's us they're looking for." "How did they find the first safe house?" Mason asked, the question that had been haunting all of them. Elena's expression darkened. "Rivera believes the dog-fighting ring has someone inside law enforcement. They intercepted communications about our location." "So, Rivera's compromised?" Logan asked sharply. "She doesn't think so," Elena replied. "She's being extremely careful, using secure channels only. But someone high up has access to police operations. Which means we can't rely on official help," Logan concluded grimly. "Not exactly," Elena countered. "Rivera's put together a trusted team, people she's personally vetted. They're closing in on the ringleader, someone named Victor Santiago, major player in organized crime, uses dogfighting to launder money and cement loyalty among his subordinates." "And Nova?" Hannah asked. "Why is she so important to them?" "Her bloodline," Elena explained. "According to Rivera's sources, Nova was their prime breeding female. Her puppies can sell for tens of thousands each to the right buyers. Plus, there's the matter of making an example of her, and us. If word got out that people could interfere with Santiago's operation and walk away, it would damage his reputation. So we're stuck here," Mason said, frustration evident in his voice, "hiding in the mountains while these criminals control whether we can ever go home." "Not necessarily," Logan interjected. "Rivera's team is making progress. With enough evidence, even Santiago can't escape prosecution." "How long?" Hannah asked, the question heavy with implication. How long until Liam could return to school? Until they could resume their normal lives? Until they wouldn't have to look over their shoulders every moment? Logan and Elena exchanged glances. "A week, maybe 2, Elena said, though her tone suggested she wasn't fully convinced. In the corner of the cabin, Liam sat with Nova and her puppies, seemingly oblivious to the adults' conversation. The puppies were growing stronger each day, their eyes now open, their movements more coordinated. Star, the runt, remained Liam's special favorite, the tiny puppy seeking him out whenever he was near. As night fell and the adults continued their discussion, Liam whispered to Nova, "We can't stay here forever. The bad men won't stop looking." Nova's amber eyes seemed to agree, her gaze occasionally drifting to the cabin door, ears alert for any sound from the forest beyond. "We need to make them stop looking," Liam continued, his young mind working through the problem with surprising clarity. "Make them think we're gone for good." Nova tilted her head, as if considering his words. I need to talk to Logan, Liam decided, giving Star one last gentle pat before joining the adults by the fire. The conversation stopped abruptly as he approached, the adults exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their desire to shield him from the harsh realities they faced. Logan, Liam said, his voice surprisingly steady for a 5-year-old facing such adversity. Nova says we can't hide forever. The bad men will keep looking until they find us. Logan knelt to Liam's level, his expression serious rather than condescending. What does Nova think we should do? He asked, treating the boy's connection with the dog as something real and valuable. She thinks, Liam started, then corrected himself. I think we need to make them stop looking. Make them think we're gone for good. The adults exchanged surprised glances. And how would we do that? Logan asked gently. Liam's blue eyes were solemn. We need to let them find something. Not us, but something that makes them think we can't talk anymore. A heavy silence fell as the adults processed the implications of the child's suggestion. It was Mason who finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. You're talking about faking our deaths, he said, making them think they've succeeded in silencing us. Liam nodded, the concept perhaps not fully formed in his young mind, but the general idea clear enough. It's not a bad strategy, Miguel said from his position near the fire, his injured arm now in a proper sling, courtesy of supplies Elena had brought back. If Santiago believes we're dead, he'll stop hunting us. It would give Rivera time to build her case without us being in constant danger. But how? Hannah asked, the practical obstacles enormous. We can't exactly stage a car accident in the middle of nowhere. Logan was thoughtful, his tactician's mind already working through possibilities. Not a car accident, he said slowly. A fire. The cabin? Elena asked, immediately grasping his thinking. Logan nodded. We create evidence that we were all here, then burn it to the ground, make it look like Santiago's men caught up with us and eliminated all witnesses. Including evidence of Nova and her puppies, Mason clarified. Especially them, Logan confirmed grimly. Santiago needs to believe his loose end has been permanently tied up. How do we make it convincing? Hannah asked. These people aren't fools. We plant DNA evidence, hair, clothing, things that would survive a fire but prove we were here, Logan explained. Elena can leak the location through channels Santiago's mole would monitor, make it look like Rivera's team found us but arrived too late. And then what? Mason pressed. We still can't go home. No, Logan agreed. Not immediately. But if Rivera's investigation succeeds, Santiago goes down. Once he's in custody awaiting trial, his operation will crumble, his people will scatter, looking to save themselves. That's when you can resurface, with a story about going into hiding after witnessing something at the amusement park that night. The plan took shape over the next 24 hours. Elena hiked out again, this time to coordinate with Rivera and gather the supplies they would need. Logan and Miguel scouted the surrounding forest, identifying the best escape route and monitoring for any sign of Santiago's men approaching. Mason and Hannah prepared for what might be weeks or even months of living off the grid, taking inventory of their supplies and discussing what else they would need. Liam spent the time with Nova and her puppies, seemingly unconcerned with the adults' preparations. But occasional comments he made about the puppies being strong enough to travel now, about Nova sensing when danger was near, suggested he understood more than anyone realized. 5 days after arriving at the cabin, they were ready. Elena had returned with backpacks, clothing, preserved food, and other essentials they would need. More importantly, she brought news from Rivera. Santiago's getting nervous, she reported. His operation is under scrutiny from multiple agencies now. Rivera's team has flipped one of his lieutenants, guy named Ramirez, the same one you saw at the amusement park. He's talking in exchange for a reduced sentence. So the plan is working, Logan concluded. Santiago's distracted, his organization starting to fracture. Which makes this the perfect time to disappear, Elena agreed. Rivera's leaked information about suspicious activity in this area. Santiago's men should be here by tomorrow night. They worked through the final details. Each of them contributed items that would survive a fire but contain their DNA, hairbrushes, clothing, personal effects. Nova's fur was scattered in strategic locations, along with a chewed dog toy that would suggest her puppies had been present. Miguel, with his background in demolitions, rigged the cabin with accelerants that would ensure a complete but controlled burn. The fire needs to be thorough enough to suggest no one could have survived, he explained, but not so explosive that it looks deliberate. By nightfall, everything was in place. They would leave before dawn, hiking to a predetermined rendezvous point 5 miles away, where Rivera would meet them with transportation to a secure location across state lines. As they settled in for their last night in the cabin, a strange sense of anticipation mixed with fear hung in the air. If their plan worked, it would mean safety, but also an indefinite period of living as ghosts, separated from their former lives and everything familiar. Liam, sensing the adults' tension, spent the evening moving between them, offering Nova-interpreted reassurances that seemed uncannily insightful for a child his age. "Nova says the bad men won't find us," he told his mother as she packed their few belongings. "She can feel when they're close, and she'll warn us." To Miguel, whose pain had increased as the day wore on, "Nova says you should rest your arm against something warm. It helps the hurt go away faster." And to Logan, who stood by the window, watching the darkness beyond with military vigilance, "Nova says you're a good pack leader. She trusts you to keep everyone safe." Logan's expression softened momentarily at the boy's words. "Tell Nova I appreciate her confidence," he replied, ruffling Liam's hair with a gruff affection that belied his usual stoicism. As the evening progressed, Nova became increasingly restless, moving repeatedly between the door and Liam, whining softly. "What is it, girl?" Logan asked, instantly alert. Liam, who had been half asleep by the fire, sat up. "She wants to go outside," he translated. "She needs to check something." Logan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll go with her." "No," Liam said with surprising authority. "She needs to go alone. She says it's important." The adults exchanged concerned glances, but something in Liam's certainty was compelling. After a brief discussion, Logan agreed to let Nova out briefly, watching from the doorway as the German shepherd disappeared into the darkness, her golden form quickly swallowed by the shadows between the trees. 15 tense minutes passed before Nova returned, trotting purposefully back to the cabin with something in her mouth. As she reached the porch, they could see it was a rabbit, freshly killed. "A gift?" Elena suggested as Nova dropped the rabbit at Liam's feet. The boy shook his head, his expression serious beyond his years. "A warning," he said quietly. "She smells humans in the forest, not far away." Logan immediately moved to the window, scanning the darkness with renewed intensity. "How many?" he asked, addressing Liam but clearly expecting Nova to provide the answer. Liam closed his eyes briefly, as if listening to something only he could hear. "3, he said finally, moving slowly, trying to be quiet. "Santiago's advanced scouts," Miguel concluded grimly. "The main force won't be far behind." "We need to move," Logan decided. "Now. Forget waiting until dawn." The cabin erupted into controlled chaos as they gathered their essential belongings, moving with the quiet efficiency of people who knew lives depended on their speed and silence. Elena helped Miguel, whose injury made him the slowest among them. Hannah ensured Liam was warmly dressed while Mason shouldered their packs. Logan checked the fire accelerants, adjusting the timers. Nova supervised the gathering of her puppies, now alert enough to whimper and squirm as they were placed in a specially designed carrier. Star, as always, was the most vocal, his tiny protests only silenced when Liam gently stroked his head. "Shh," the boy whispered. "We need to be quiet like ninjas, remember?" Within 20 minutes, they were ready. Logan made a final adjustment to the timers, setting them to trigger in approximately 2 hours, enough time for them to be well away, but soon enough that any watching eyes would believe they had been caught in the blaze. They slipped out through a small rear window, one that would be destroyed in the fire, leaving no evidence of their escape route. Logan led the way, followed by Hannah with Liam, then Mason carrying Nova's puppies, with Elena and Miguel bringing up the rear. Nova herself moved fluidly between them, sometimes ranging ahead to scout the path, other times circling back to check on her puppies, and the humans she had accepted as her pack. The forest was dark, the quarter moon providing only minimal illumination through the thick canopy of pine and spruce. They moved slowly, carefully, every step calculated to make as little noise as possible. When branches cracked underfoot or equipment shifted with a telltale clink, They froze, waiting in breathless silence before continuing. Their route took them away from the direction where Nova had sent Santiago's scouts, heading instead towards steeper, more difficult terrain that would be challenging to follow in the darkness. It was a gamble. Slower progress meant more time for pursuit to catch up, but the more difficult path reduced the chances of accidental encounter. After an hour of tense hiking, they paused in a small clearing, catching their breath and allowing Miguel to rest his injured arm. The cabin was now invisible behind them, hidden by distance and the dense forest. "How much further to the rendezvous point?" Mason asked, his voice barely audible. "About 3 miles," Logan replied. "But the worst terrain is still ahead. There's a ravine we need to cross." As they rested, Nova suddenly stiffened, her head turning sharply back the way they had come. A low growl rumbled in her throat. "What is it?" Hannah whispered, instinctively pulling Liam closer. Logan and Miguel were already on their feet, weapons ready. "How many, Liam?" Logan asked, his voice calm but urgent. Liam placed his hand on Nova's back, closing his eyes in that now familiar gesture of deep communication. "More than before," he said after a moment. "They found the cabin. They're spreading out, looking for tracks." "They'll find our trail eventually," Logan said grimly. "We need to move, now." They continued their journey with renewed urgency, the knowledge that pursuit was active, eliminating any thought of extended rest. The terrain grew steeper, the forest floor giving way to rocky outcroppings that provided better footing but greater visibility to anyone watching from a distance. Nova now stayed closer to the group, particularly near Liam and her puppies, her protective instinct clearly heightened by the sense of danger. Occasionally she would freeze, ears swiveling to catch sounds beyond human hearing, before guiding them in a slightly different direction, away from what only she could detect. The ravine Logan had mentioned appeared before them like a sudden wound in the earth, 30 feet across and at least twice that in depth, with a fast-moving stream visible at the bottom. A fallen tree created a narrow, precarious bridge. "One at a time," Logan instructed. "I'll go first, then Hannah and Liam, then the puppies with Mason, followed by Elena and Miguel." He crossed swiftly, his movement sure despite the darkness and the swaying of the makeshift bridge. Hannah followed more slowly, one hand gripping a branch for balance, the other firmly holding Liam's. "Don't look down," she whispered to her son. "Just look at Logan." Liam nodded, his face set with determination, as he placed one foot carefully in front of the other. Nova paced anxiously on their side of the ravine, whining softly as her boy moved across the dangerous gap without her. When Hannah and Liam reached the other side, Mason prepared to cross with the puppy carrier. But before he could step onto the log, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. A gunshot, followed immediately by a second. "They've found us!" Miguel hissed, his weapon already raised, scanning the darkness behind them. "Go!" Logan called from across the ravine. "Now!" Mason began his crossing, moving as quickly as he dared with the precious cargo of puppies. Elena helped Miguel onto the log, his injured arm making him dangerously unsteady. Nova, still on the far side, began barking, not at the advancing threat, but at the ravine itself. As Mason reached the midpoint of the log, a horrible sound reached them, the cracking of wood under stress. "The log is breaking!" Hannah cried in horror. Mason lunged forward, desperation adding speed to his movements. He was 3/4 across when the log shifted dramatically, beginning to split where it rested on the far edge. With a final desperate effort, Mason threw the puppy carrier the remaining distance to Logan's waiting arms, then leapt as the log gave way completely, his fingers just managing to grasp the edge of the ravine as the bridge crashed into the darkness below. Logan and Hannah pulled him to safety, the 3 adults collapsing in a heap as they processed how close the call had been. But their relief was short-lived. "Nova!" Liam screamed, pointing across the ravine. The German Shepherd was trapped on the far side, with Elena and Miguel beside her. Worse, the sounds of pursuit were growing louder, voices calling to each other, flashlight beams visible between distant trees. "We're cut off!" Elena called across the gap, her voice tightly controlled. "You need to keep moving. Get Liam and the puppies to the rendezvous point." "We can't leave you," Hannah protested. "You must," Miguel countered firmly. "We'll find another way around. Lead them away from you." Nova barked once, sharp and commanding, then turned and disappeared into the forest, clearly intending to draw pursuit away from both groups. Elena and Miguel followed her example, moving away from the ravine at an angle that would lead Santiago's men away from the path to the rendezvous point. They're creating a diversion, Logan realized. We need to honor that by moving, now. With heavy hearts, they continued their journey, the puppy carrier now seeming even more precious as they realized its mother was sacrificing herself to ensure her children's safety. Liam was inconsolable, tears streaming down his face as he clutched Star, who had somehow worked his way out of the carrier during the commotion. "Nova will come back," he insisted between sobs. "She promised me." The remaining 2 miles to the rendezvous point were covered in grim silence, broken only by Liam's occasional sniffles and the soft whimpers of the puppies, who seemed to sense their mother's absence. When they finally reached the small forest road where Rivera was to meet them, dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through the trees. They waited, tense and alert, for any sign of either their rescue or their pursuers. When headlights finally appeared on the road, Logan positioned himself protectively in front of Hannah, Liam, and Mason, his weapon ready. The vehicle stopped 30 yards away. A door opened, and a familiar voice called out the password phrase, "Blue mountains rise at dawn." "Only at yesterday's sunset," Logan replied with the correct countersign. Rivera stepped into view, her hand raised to show she was alone and unarmed. "Thank God," she said as she approached. "When I heard gunshots—" "Elena and Miguel are still out there," Logan interrupted. "With Nova. We got separated at a ravine. Santiago's men were right behind us." "How many men?" Rivera asked sharply. "At least a dozen," Logan estimated. "Maybe more." Liam sensed them through Nova. Rivera didn't question this unusual source of intelligence. "I've got a team 5 minutes behind me," she said. "Full tactical gear. They can sweep the area, extract Elena and Miguel if possible." "And Nova," Liam insisted, his voice small but determined. "They have to find Nova too." "And Nova," Rivera agreed gently. "Now, let's get you all out of here." She led them to her vehicle, a nondescript SUV with darkened windows. As they settled inside, the radio crackled with reports from Rivera's team, now arriving at the pre-designated coordinates. "The cabin's gone," a male voice reported, "completely destroyed by fire. We're checking for survivors now." "That was the plan," Logan reminded the others. "As far as Santiago knows, we all died in that fire." "What about Elena and Miguel?" Hannah asked. "And Nova?" Rivera's expression was grim but determined. "My team will find them. In the meantime, we need to get you to the safe house. You've done your part, now let us do ours." As they drove away from the mountains, Liam sat silently, Star cradled against his chest, the other puppies nestled in the carrier beside him. His eyes remained fixed on the forest behind them, watching, waiting, believing with a child's unshakable faith that Nova would somehow find her way back to them. The journey to the safe house, a secure facility operated by federal marshals, took several hours. Throughout the drive, Rivera received regular updates from her team, each one increasing the knot of tension in the adults' stomachs. Santiago's men had indeed found the destroyed cabin. They were searching the surrounding forest, apparently convinced that someone might have escaped the fire. "Good," Rivera said grimly. "While they're focusing there, we're getting you far away." It was late afternoon when they arrived at the safe house, a sprawling ranch-style home surrounded by high walls and visible security measures. Inside, they were met by marshals who efficiently processed them into the witness protection program under temporary identities. "Just until Santiago is in custody," Rivera assured them. "Once he's arrested, you'll be able to resume your lives." "And when will that be?" Mason asked, the strain of the past week evident in his voice. "Soon," Rivera promised. "With Ramirez's testimony and the evidence we've gathered, we're close to moving on Santiago's entire operation. Days, not weeks." As they settled into their temporary accommodations, Liam remained subdued, his usual energy dimmed by worry for Nova. He attended dutifully to the puppies, ensuring they were fed and comfortable, but his eyes frequently drifted to the windows, searching for a familiar golden form that wasn't there. Night fell with no word about Elena, Miguel, or Nova. Rivera, who had stayed at the safe house to personally oversee their security, finally received a call that had her stepping outside to take it privately, never a good sign. When she returned, her expression confirmed their fears. "They found signs of a confrontation," she reported quietly. "Blood on the ground, shell casings. Elena and Miguel were there, but they're gone now. Whether they were captured or managed to escape, we don't know yet. "And Nova?" Liam asked, his voice small but insistent. Rivera knelt to his level, her usual professional demeanor softening. "There was no sign of Nova, Liam." "That could be good news. It might mean she got away." Liam nodded solemnly, accepting this answer with more composure than anyone would expect from a 5-year-old. "She got away," he said with absolute certainty. "She's coming to find us." The adults exchanged glances over his head, none wanting to crush his hope, all fearing it was misplaced. That night, as Liam finally fell into exhausted sleep surrounded by Nova's puppies, Hannah sat with Mason and Logan in the safe house kitchen, the day's events weighing heavily on them. "Do you think there's any chance," Hannah asked quietly, "that Nova survived? That she could find us?" Logan, who had seen extraordinary things in his years working with military dogs, shrugged. "Dogs have tracked people over hundreds of miles, made journeys that seem impossible. If any dog could do it, Nova could." "Because of her connection with Liam," Mason said, not quite a question. Logan nodded. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if they share some kind of frequency, something beyond normal communication." They fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts, their own hopes and fears. The puppies were safe. They were safe. But at what cost? Elena and Miguel possibly captured or worse. And Nova, a remarkable dog who had already survived one attempt on her life, now alone in a forest full of men determined to kill her. The next morning brought unexpected news. Rivera arrived early, her expression the most positive they had seen since this ordeal began. "We got him," she announced without preamble. "Santiago, he's in custody." The relief in the room was palpable. "How?" Mason asked. "Ramirez's testimony gave us enough for search warrants. We found documentation at Santiago's estate, records of the dog-fighting operation, payoffs to corrupt officials, everything. He was arrogant enough to keep proof of his own crimes." "So it's over?" Hannah asked, hardly daring to believe it could be true. "The danger to you is over," Rivera confirmed. "Santiago's operation is being dismantled as we speak. His men are scattering, looking to save themselves. You can go home, though you'll need to testify eventually." "And Elena?" "Miguel?" Logan pressed. Here, Rivera's expression clouded. "Still missing? But with Santiago's organization in chaos, there's a better chance they'll be able to escape if they were captured. Or be found if they're hiding," Mason added. Liam, who had been listening silently while feeding the puppies, suddenly looked up. "Nova's coming," he announced with that same eerie certainty. "She's close." Before anyone could respond, a marshal burst into the room. "Detective Rivera," he said urgently. "There's a dog at the perimeter fence. Security cameras picked it up. Looks like a German shepherd." They rushed outside, Liam in the lead, despite Hannah's attempts to hold him back. At the edge of the property, just beyond the security fence, stood a familiar golden form, thin, dirty, one leg clearly injured, but unmistakably Nova. "Nova!" Liam cried, running toward the fence. The German shepherd's ears perked up at his voice. She limped forward, pressing herself against the fence as Liam reached it. Her tail wagged weakly, her amber eyes fixed on the boy with undisguised joy. "Open the gate!" Rivera ordered the hesitant security personnel. "That dog is part of our witness protection detail." The reunion between Liam and Nova was something none of them would ever forget. The German shepherd, despite her injuries and exhaustion, lavished the boy with affection, licking his face and whining softly as if telling him about her journey. Liam wrapped his arms around her neck, tears of joy streaming down his face. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. "I told everyone you would." Nova was immediately taken to a veterinarian who treated her injured leg and other, smaller wounds that told the story of a desperate fight and a determined journey. Throughout the examination, she refused to be separated from Liam, growing anxious whenever he moved out of her sight. "She tracked him across 50 miles of wilderness," Logan said with undisguised admiration, "through terrain specifically designed to prevent tracking, past armed men actively looking for her, to a secure facility she'd never seen before." "For her puppies," Hannah suggested. Logan shook his head. "For Liam," he corrected softly. "The puppies were safe. She came for the boy." 3 days later, with Santiago's operation in ruins and multiple arrests made, they were cleared to return home. Their story, a carefully constructed version that protected them from further danger, became public. A family who witnessed criminals at an abandoned amusement park went into hiding after an attempt on their lives and helped bring down a major dog fighting ring. Elena and Miguel were found alive, having managed to escape their pursuers and make their way to a remote hunting cabin where they had been hiding until it was safe to emerge. Their reunion with the group was emotional, with even the normally stoic Logan showing clear relief. As they prepared to return to their normal lives, one question remained. What would happen to Nova and her puppies? "They're coming home with us," Liam declared with absolute certainty. "They're family now." Mason and Hannah, who had witnessed the extraordinary bond between their son and the German Shepherd, didn't even try to argue. Nova had saved their lives, protected their son, and found her way back to him against impossible odds. How could they possibly separate them now? So it was that Nova and her 5 puppies, Star, Luna, Comet, Orion, and Astro, joined the White family officially. Their home, once peaceful and ordinary, became a haven for a mother dog and her growing puppies, filled with the chaos and joy that multiple canine companions bring. Liam blossomed, his unusual sensitivity now recognized as the gift it truly was. The connection he shared with Nova remained special, inexplicable to outsiders, but accepted and valued by those who had witnessed its power. Weeks turned into months. The puppies grew, each developing their own personality, though Star remained the smallest and the most attached to Liam. Nova recovered fully from her injuries, her coat regaining its golden luster, her amber eyes watchful but at peace. One evening, as Hannah watched Liam playing in the backyard with Nova and her now half-grown puppies, Mason came to stand beside her. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked quietly. "How different our lives would be if Liam hadn't heard her crying?" Hannah nodded, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Every day. We would never have known what he could do, this gift he has. We would never have met Logan or Elena or Miguel. We would never have had the chance to help bring down people who were hurting animals and corrupting our town. And we wouldn't have 6 dogs," Mason added with a wry smile, watching as Star performed an elaborate playbow before pouncing on Liam, who collapsed in giggles. "No regrets?" Hannah asked, looking up at her husband. Mason shook his head, his eyes soft as he watched his son. "Not one." In the yard, Nova paused in her play, her amber eyes catching Hannah's gaze. The German Shepherd seemed to nod once, an acknowledgement between mothers who had both fought to protect what they loved most in the world. Then she turned back to Liam, nudging him gently with her nose in their own private communication, a bond that had begun with a cry in the storm and would continue for many years to come. If you enjoyed this incredible journey with Liam, Nova, and their family, please like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Don't forget to comment below and tell us which part touched your heart the most.